Hello everyone, it's good to have you back. I hope you're all well. Today's video asks this question: is the ALP a cult? A while ago I was at Cairns in Queensland at the Cairns Festival. What has that to do with the ALP, you ask? Let me tell you. The Cairns Festival organisers like to get unknown and sometimes fringe bands to perform to give them some exposure. One band came on stage and sang about, now wait for it, their experiences in the ALP. That's right. They were singing about their life, beliefs and experiences in the ALP political party. Their lyrics were interesting. In one song they said they were good people because they embraced and promoted things like diversity, equity and inclusion. It was because they embraced these things that they were good, virtuous people. They also said in the end they would be victorious. What they meant they didn't explain, but I assume they meant that in the end they would be victorious over the conservative elements of society. This is what they sang about. I thought about their lyrics: diversity, equity, inclusion. What are these things? What they are ALP policies. Equity, diversity, inclusion are things we hear from the ALP all the time. Because they embraced these things, they said they were good, virtuous people. Now these ideas may be fine, but unfortunately they've also been weaponised by the ALP to promote the ALP and to denigrate Australians who don't agree with the ALP. I reflected a bit more. I was under the impression the ALP followed a left-wing philosophy, but now we hear things like virtue and being good. The problem is that these things don't fit well with modern philosophies. And why is that? Well, modern philosophy recognises one thing, and that is the personal experiences of individuals. Something may be true for you, but not for others. Modern philosophers have problems with things like good and evil in particular. To call something evil suggests that standards exist outside of human experience. That is, there are some things out there that defines what evil is, and also good and virtue for that matter. Modern philosophies don't like that. It reminds them of things like gods and devils, places they definitely do not want to go. Some may say that evil is just an expression we use to label something that's harmful or unhelpful, and so on. But wait a minute, if all you have is individuals' experiences to appeal to, that doesn't work. For example, people may think that the horrors committed by Nazi Germany were evil, because many today think they were destructive, unjust, cruel, and so on. But right now we have neo-Nazis in parts of Europe who praise and copy what the Nazis did. These neo-Nazis think what they do is good and helpful. So who is right? After all, this is their experience, just like we have our own experiences and points of view. So who is evil and who is not? See the problem? Who says what is evil and what is good? If all you have is an individual's experience, you can't rely on these all-encompassing statements such as good, virtue and evil. You just have nothing to appeal to. What you need is something outside of human experience, and that's where the problems start. So we now have the ALP, which is supposed to be a philosophy, but it uses things that exist outside our world of modern philosophy, outside the world of just human experiences. It says things that modern philosophers often dismiss and ridicule. Where do things like good, virtue and evil come from? It's not the law. Laws are not a standard that exists outside of human experience. In fact, they're an expression of human experience. They differ from country to country. What one country outlaws, another one allows. Laws are usually just agreements arrived at by a few that are forced upon the many, often at the objection of large sections of the population, as was the case with the recent pandemic laws passed in Victoria. So laws are also just a relative thing, just like the rest of human knowledge. So again, where do things like virtue, good and evil come from? In particular, virtue. The idea of virtuous behaviour and virtue signalling is widespread and widely practiced within the ALP. It's the reason why we often see virtue signalling going on among supporters of the ALP. Let me give you some examples. My son attended Melbourne High School some years back. I remember an event parents were invited to. It was a choral group from Uganda, Africa, who performed in the school hall. We attended and saw a choir of young African kids sing, and they were pretty good. We were impressed. For some reason the parents were all standing and formed two lines down each side of the hall. I noticed one woman in the audience who watered up her eyes. Tears were clearly flowing down her face. Then she stepped forward from the line of parents and looked up and down the line, making sure that others saw her and her tears. I think she wanted to make sure that everyone saw how emotionally moved she was by the diversity on display in the school hall. She was some 40 years old and she was behaving like a child. This was virtue signalling at its dramatic best. She wanted everyone in the hall to know that she embraced ALP diversity doctrine so much that she was emotionally moved by it. I have another example of virtue signalling. Some years back I read about two people in Melbourne who worked in a government office. They were in conflict and couldn't get on with each other, and one ended up leaving. When she left, she said that while she could not work with the other person, they were both in complete agreement when it came to ALP ideology. That's right. Their problem was that they couldn't get on with each other and possibly even detested each other. The important thing is that they were in perfect agreement with ALP policy and doctrine. Ideas of virtue signalling are entrenched in the ALP. But who gets to say what virtuous behaviour is? The ALP has adopted these things not from modern philosophy, but from the realm of some type of political pseudo-religion. This is very odd. What else does the ALP do? Do they copy religions in other ways? In many religious movements, some sort of meeting place is needed, where doctrine is explained to people and people are encouraged to adopt and promote that doctrine. Does the ALP do this? I think they do. One place they do this is the ABC. Most people think the ABC is just a biased left-wing news outlet. It is that, but it's also a lot more. What the ABC does is explain and promote ALP policy to ordinary people, and in particular to the ALP faithful. And what do the ALP faithful do? They listen to the ABC, of course. They ask, what must I do to be a good person? And the ABC tells them and explains it to them. And then off they go and promptly adopt, promote and defend the new ALP doctrine they hear. The ABC is like a church to the ALP faithful. It's the place where the ALP faithful go to hear what they should believe and what they should support. And wanting to be seen as good, faithful ALP supporters, they quickly adopt what they hear. And they have no butterflies about adopting it. Butterflies within the ALP have never been a good thing, and are purged from ALP followers at a very early stage. So we see the ALP has a type of church which serves exactly the same purpose as churches and meeting places for other religions. So where do their standards of good and virtue come from? Let's go back to this idea of a broadly held understanding of what virtuous behaviour is. Where does this come from? What standard outside of human experience does the ALP appeal to? Do they have some god or godlike message they received that they go to and everyone must listen to and adopt? A god or deity of some sort would be great to have, but the ALP, being good communists and Marxists they are, do not believe in God, so what do? To understand this, you need to delve a little into Marxist thinking, in particular into their thinking about the communist Marxist socialist movement. Sometimes this is just called the party. What they mean is the political organisation leading the charge against the capitalist conservative religious institutions in a country. To Marx, the left-wing movement, or the party, is the central theme of history. This political party will endure, and in the end it'll be victorious and defeat the conservative forces in society, and bring about the glorious communist, socialist, Marxist utopia, where everyone can enjoy the great benefits of Marxist teaching. You might have heard something like this before. It turns out that in Australia, this is the ALP itself. To the ALP faithful, the ALP is the closest thing they have to a deity or a god that hands down doctrine and truth from on high. To the faithful, the ALP declares its doctrines and beliefs. They define what is right and wrong, and the ALP faithful eagerly adopt these doctrines and beliefs. The god that the ALP follow is the ALP itself. Weird, isn't it? What they have here is a human organisation that ends up behaving like a god, handing down standards of behaviour to the party faithful. Don't believe me? Notice how the ALP, the political party, can do no wrong. I was talking to an ALP supporter recently when I was in Gosford, New South Wales. I explained to him how Daniel Andrews had done some terrible and possibly criminal things, and without even hearing me out, without even considering any evidence, he immediately said, "No, that's not possible." To him the ALP could do no wrong. To him the ALP is somehow a morally faultless organisation. And notice how the ABC behaves when some ALP parliamentarian breaks the law or parliamentary rule. The ABC is very reluctant to report it while that person is still a member of the ALP government. They only confidently report it when the person becomes a former member of the ALP government. That is, they wait until this person is no longer a part of the ALP. Only then can they report it comfortably. And every time they do, they refer to this person as a former member of the ALP. In their mind, the ALP can do no wrong. To the ABC, the ALP must be free from all moral corruption and wrongdoing. The ALP and their followers in the mainstream media take this to extremes. They had a real problem in Victoria with Daniel Andrews during the COVID-19 pandemic. The media went into overdrive to cover up Daniel Andrews' corruption, lies and dishonesty, even to the point of withholding news stories and distorting what happened. Some in the media even threatened other reporters who were going to report about it. As Sky News Australia pointed out, it appears the ALP has their own God who does no wrong and must be free from all blame, and this God is the ALP itself. And the ALP faithful are totally devoted to their God. To them, the ALP protects their jobs, protects their income, sometimes even provides their job. It funnels money or legislation their way so they can enjoy homes, family and a good lifestyle so much that they don't need to worry. Only they're required to support, vote for and defend their God against every possible threat and against every heretic who would dare accuse the ALP of wrongdoing. In summary, we can see that the ALP has all the parts of a religious cult. I find it interesting when ex-communists sometimes write about the God that failed. What they really mean is the Communist Socialist Marxist Party that they believed in and devoted much of their life to has somehow failed them or their movement. Now we see that they're not wrong when they refer to their political party as a God that failed them, because that is what it really is to them. Being a deity of sorts in the minds of their followers, the ALP lays down the rules about what is good, virtuous or evil, and the party faithful adopt these doctrines without question. And they also have a church, the ABC, where ALP doctrine is taught and explained to the party faithful. And their followers attend this church, promptly and without questions adopt the doctrines presented. And they also have their heretics. These are people they'd like to burn at the stake if they could. These heretics are people like you and me, who don't agree with the ALP but see things differently and have their own points of view. They slander us by calling us Nazis, fascists, terrorists and so on. And it's not because of anything we've done. It's simply because we don't agree with and believe the ALP doctrines as they do. We're heretics because of what we think, not what we do. To them, we're people who are damned. We have no place in their communist Marxist world. And in the past they have corralled people like us into their gulags as punishment for our heresy. This is how the ALP think and live, and it's utter madness. The ALP has all the elements of a cult. The ALP is really a pseudo-religious cult, but it also has major failings. It is not a god, but a man-made organisation that has the worst possible people leading it. But they can't see this. They followed people like Paul Keating, Kevin Rudd and Daniel Andrews as though they were Moses coming down from the mountain. They could see none of their failings. And when confronted with these men's failing, they were either silent or quick to explain it away. Also, being a man-made institution, the teachings of the ALP changes with the wind. It's based on political expedience, which changes as the political winds change. We need to remember that the ALP actually introduced the White Australia policy to protect their workers from the influx of cheap Chinese labour many decades ago. Finally, the ALP has bands of faithful followers who won't or can't think for themselves, but have their mind taken captive and ensnared by bizarre ALP dogma. It is truly a ridiculous and mad religious cult. Thank you again for your time.